Good morning, gang. Joyce with Skipping Calves Farms here. The last couple of days, the sheep were restricted from coming back here. They couldn't come this side of the boat, so they've been grazing on the other half of this back paddock. And so I just opened it up back here. Again, they were out here for a little while earlier in the week. Mama's going back to scratching. She seems to be visibly slowing down. So I'm kind of keeping my eye on her. Seems to be healthy as best I can tell. She's still eating. She's still getting up. She's still moving around. But she just lost an edge. She's just kind of slowing down. And boy, she sure does like that corner of the cattle panels. And there'll be a bunch. Well, you can kind of see. I can see my mind's eye. Those little tiny white patches down under her feet, those are all fragments of hair. But I'm back here, and one of the reasons is this is at the back corner of the paddock. And, it's kind of, well, you got that brush pile there, you've got the chicken tractor there, and you've got the cattle panels there, so it's kind of got a closed-in feel from the perspective of a sheep. So they don't tend to come back here and browse a whole lot unless I'm here. They just feel a little more comfortable, I guess, when I'm here. And that's kind of a nice compliment. Those little boogers. Now, where they're standing right there, that's going to be my, I think I'm going to make that my sweet tater patch again. It didn't do great last year because I got them in so late. But I do have some sweet potatoes from my patch from last year that I put in soil, and they are making the sweet tater starts. And so I'll come back here and cultivate that a bit more. She is still scratching. She's just not eating and drinking like she did before. It's like take everything she did and turn it down about 25%. And that's kind of where Mama is right now. So, but she is still eating. There's no evidence of any discomfort. And I don't know if it's just a preoccupation of trying to get that winter coat off of her, or if it's just that she's getting really, really old. And I mean, that's one reason why Dr. Kent wanted, he was going to give her away to somebody like as a pet or something along those lines. Look at her. Sticking her tongue out. She found a good spot. But, yeah, it is what it is. I'm closer to 70 than I am to 65, and it's a whole lot different than when I was in my early 50s when I moved up here. So, you do what you can with what you got, and trust the Lord for everything else. So, another reason I'm kind of standing here, and Daughter's discovered that, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. A few years ago, to give you a little background, a few years ago, let me zoom back out. A few years ago, when we had a really bad rain, that whole northern edge of my property got submerged. And because the soil was not healed very much or at all at that point, that water sat on my property for like 2 days. I had hundreds, if not thousands, of drowned earthworms, and it made me feel like I was in the Everglades, if you know what I'm talking about. River that's what they say. Everglades is a river that's 50 miles long, 100 miles wide, and 6 inches deep or something like that. Anyhow, so at that point in time, it was the beginning of my journey. You can see those chickens right there in the middle, they've gone up. Now that was an area that I seeded about a week ago. It's also an area where the sheepfold was located, so there's going to be a lot of seed from the hay. And they've been going up there and foraging. They've been foraging a lot more. Why? Because I'm trying to wean them off of giving them quite so much feed. I was just giving them, free choice feed. And the cost of feed has gone up, and my birds are fat and healthy. Maybe so fat they're not healthy. So I've cut back on their free choice feed. So they're out and they're wandering a bit more. They've also discovered that sometimes when I feed the sheep, their sheep feed, those guys will dribble a little bit. So they've actually gone into the sheepfold where they were the other day, and we're scrounging there as well. So, but I digress. Let me get back to my story, part of it. So what I ended up doing, as I say, I was early in my journey. Taking my gloves off there. And as a scientist, I was kind of pursuing it from that perspective. So what I did was I had one of those tree transplanting spades. It's a really heavy-duty blade that's maybe about the width of your hand and about 10 inches long and about this thick. And you just push it in the ground and you walk it back and forth with a T-post handle. And you make kind of a groove in the soil. And what I ended up doing was I made a little trench all the way across my property, up to about here, I guess it was, yeah, this side of the driveway. And then I put a little bit of charcoal in it, and push that down. Why? The idea was to create that groove so it would work like a French drain. If anybody's familiar with a French drain, it's a pipe or an area of more airspace that goes in a linear fashion to draw water away and down from a foundation or structure. So basically that's what I did. I created just a ditch here going all the way over here to about the property line. And it actually worked fairly well. But at the same time, I was just discovering agricultural stuff. And so I ordered a mix of seed that would include taproots and some other things. So I got some sorghum Sudan and a number of other things. And one of the other things that I got was, let me show you down here, and now most of this is just viney stuff. I think this is what they call wild carrot here. But what I'm talking about is this. Where is my hand? Here's my hand. What is this? This is hairy vetch, and you can kind of see the beginning right there by my fingers of a little purple flower. Not to be confused with this. This is a forb. I don't know what kind of a weed it is, but it is, it grows around all over the place. And it's an early initiator. But hairy vetch is a legume. They also, I think, if I'm not mistaken, they call it poor man's alfalfa. It's got a lot of nitrogen in it. Well, I did a second trench because I had a low spot here along this property line. I had a little bit of seed left over. I also did a little bit of the planting across here. The only thing that's been coming up in the last couple of years is the hairy vetch. Well, that's a good thing because the sorghum Sudan grass has not really been coming up because the need for the taproot isn't there anymore. It's a healing type of plant. And there's more of the hairy vetch back here because the sheep won't come in and eat it to the ground because they don't like being right here. This is the corner of my perimeter fence. And as I turn around, you can see, I'm going to hold the camera horizontal. You can see over here is another slope that starts to go up. What's right down here is the creek. So as I tip the camera down, you can see the creek. And that's a vertical bluff, I'll call it now. That's about 7 or 8 feet tall. The creek bottom used to be, when I first moved here, the level of the water of the creek was about 3 to 4 feet higher. So what you see right here as a vertical bluff that goes from here to here, well, the original creek bottom was right up here when I first got here. It was still an intermittent creek, but we had water that ran about 6 to 7 months a year, typically. Now, well, we didn't have any water running through almost all winter long. We've had water in the creek now for, I guess, about 2 weeks. But you can see, that's now, I'm trying to guess, if I were to try and estimate, that's now at least 6 to 8 or 10 feet below surface ground where I'm standing. That big tree that's right there, below that big tree down to the water line right now, looks like, as I'm standing here, that looks like it's about 8 feet. That was about 2 to 3 feet off the water. You know, here's the main part. That's a huge walnut tree. And it comes across here, and then you have this other branch that goes down here. This other branch that goes down here, this section here, was only about 3 feet above the water. That's now about 6 or 7 feet above the water, at least, as it looks like from here. So they're not going to spend a lot of time back here because they're not super comfortable being in this little corner. And I'm very happy about that. Why would you say that? Well, I don't like all the vines here. That's true. And the vines have kind of taken over, and it makes a little bit more work. Well, let me get you zoomed out. I apologize, gang. Makes a bit more work for keeping this area up. And I'll probably have to put a bunch of fencing around it like I did before to keep the chickens from going in there and scratching. You can see where the chickens have been scratching right there. But even though it's got all this viney stuff, it's also got this hairy vetch. Well, why am I excited about that? Because this hairy vetch in this section will go to seed. You already saw some of the flowers. So, Lord willing, they won't come back here and eat it to the ground. So there'll be enough hairy vetch to at least keep a little bit of it out in the paddock. There's still some, you can see some all over the paddock, but it's only maybe 10%, or maybe even a little less. That I can still see. When I'm putting my temporary fencing in, if I see a patch of hairy vetch that's close to where I'm putting the fence, guess what? Put the fence right next to it. Why? Because I want to try and keep the sheep from eating on it, so I can keep it from getting eaten clean. See? That's exactly what Mama's going for. She's eating the hairy vetch right now. So that and that viney stuff. They'll also eat, see, she should be going for the onions next. Yep, she's eating those onions. I had a huge infestation of wild garlic onions, and she just ate the onions. So it's all good. This pile of wood here has been in place for about 10 years and has decayed down to just about nothing. My neighbors and good, godly, salt of the earth folk, Denny and Tracy True, when I got hit by the tornado, they were the one local folk that came through and really helped me out. And he's the same guy that helped me with my driveway earlier, a few months ago, with his his backhoe. And so he came over after the tornado, and I had been taken advantage of by the lumbermen. They were to clean up all this stuff, and they didn't do it. And took my lumber and tore up my land and ran, which I guess is kind of typical of those guys. And so anyway, that was this huge pile of wood, and it's rotted down to almost nothing. Let me show you the quality of the dirt there before I let me pick up my gloves here. And let me show you the quality of the dirt now. You can see, Mama, you got a dirty butt. You can see that even though it's not strawberry blonde anymore, look where Sissy's standing. That's where the chickens were digging. I think there was a possum out here last night. It looks like it's kind of milk chocolate. You see where they're scratching, there's a little moisture. But it's typically a brown color, not an orange color. Everything else is what I would call strawberry blonde. It wouldn't be much different than the color of this rotten log. Okay, but I wanted to walk around here, and you can see where I had to cut that tree off and to get the fence through. It's been a job, gang. If you saw this place when I first got there, it's amazing. Now that I go back with my mind's eye, or go back into old photographs. But when the Korean natural farming people talk about you're looking for forested type soil, this is what you're looking for. And you can dig in here. See how dark that is? That's almost black. That looks like the kind of stuff, looks like the color of quote unquote black cow, right? But all it is wood that's composted in place. You've got all the local indigenous microbes. Now see how light colored that is? That's what's left of the root ball of one of the trees that Denny put up. So that was the color of the surface of my ground. Now with all these trees rotting in place here, you just saw how dark that dirt is. Well, let me look down to see. It feels a little soft right here under my feet. Not quite like it was over there. But let's just pull it aside and look. That's pretty dark. And that's because of the organics. and the humus. So this is still decaying. I'm still going to let it decay in place. Why? Because this is where I get my soil when I'm doing my JMS, my Jadam Indigenous Microbe Solution. This is where I get my microbes from. So if you noticed, I moved from that corner. I did it deliberately. I moved from that corner where Mama and the kids were there chunking away at the Lespedisa, the Korean, no, I'm sorry, the hairy vetch. And so once I left that corner and I wasn't there anymore, daughter and the kids are over here. They just seem to follow my voice. Isn't that cool? That's just a cool idea. Most of this wood is really pretty soft. None of it is really hard. So I've decided not to fence it off. And keeping an eye, and the kids are not too terribly adventuresome. They're not coming over here into this crazy town stuff. They'll just kind of follow around the edges. But by letting them have access inside, they're eating on these vines, which when I had this thing fenced off last year so that mother and daughter were not able to get in here at all. But the lambs are small enough and light enough that they're not likely to break through on any of the timbers. And so look at them eating that blackberry. That's exactly what I was hoping for. So with that, gang, Mama's over there just scratching away. Kids are munching on blackberries. And daughter's over here going for the good stuff. And this video has gotten too long and I got to get back to work. So with that, gang, I will wish you blessings for the day. And whatever you do, just keep chasing your dream.